What's up, Buckeye fans? Welcome to Ohio State's second off weekend of the 2025 season. I'm Patrick Murphy with Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports, doing a little solo reaction show today after Ryan Day had his brief but interesting press conference ahead of the Buckeyes off weekend. The biggest topic I think that came out of this was, well, twofold. First, we'll start with the run game, but also the pass block or the blocking, excuse me, and specifically right guard and Integra Shabola and Josh Padilla. We'll get to that in a second. But let's start on the ground where Ryan Day was fairly adamant when asked about the Buckeyes that and their rushing attack that these are some young guys that are still running the ball. Obviously, CJ Donaldson, not a young guy after playing at West Virginia. But James Peoples, a second-year guy, but didn't play a lot last year. And then Bo Jackson and we saw last week Isaiah West get into the mix, both true freshmen. And the point that Ryan Day made, and I don't think he's hiding from the run game issues, and I'll talk about what he said about that. But was these guys are learning, they're turning on film for the first time, and they are getting used to kind of this game and how it all works at the college level. I think we often expect, especially at a place like Ohio State, for players to come in and be ready to go right away. And oftentimes they are. We saw it last year with Jeremiah Smith. We've seen it with plenty of Buckeye freshmen. We've seen it freshman running backs, J.K. Dobbins being a recent example. Travion Henderson, another one. But not everybody are those players. And as they like to say around here, everyone's journey is different, right? And so these guys are getting on the field somewhat by necessity, but also somewhat because they have ability. But it requires them to learn how to develop at this level. And as Ryan Day said, take the coaching that they are given, the feedback, and then be able to apply it to the field. Which I think Bo Jackson is probably a little further along than a guy like Isaiah West. James Peoples probably further along than both of them, but they are all doing this for the first time, which I think is some good perspective to have when we're talking about some of the run game. Now, I do think it's hard to ignore what Bo Jackson and Isaiah West have done. Isaiah West specifically in this last game against Wisconsin. We need to see more of that before at least I feel comfortable saying that he is a guy that is one of two guys or however many they're gonna use. But I did like a lot of what I saw on Saturday against Wisconsin, and I think it's hard to argue that he should at least get some more opportunities to show that he can do that consistently against other Big Ten teams. And let's remember, Wisconsin's run defense was probably the strength of their whole team this year, and in a year that's gone pretty poorly for the Badgers. So I think that's a positive sign that he was able to do some things the way he was able to make guys miss, undoubtedly. And Ryan Day said it both after the game and again today that you can't overlook something like that. That's important. Bo Jackson, obviously, what he's done. I think this off weekend is important for him because he's been playing through this banged up ankle. So hopefully he can get healthy and look a little more like he did early in the season. But he's still developing and coming along, right? And so, I don't think the expectations for him, to be this superstar as a freshman, that's not what the Buckeyes expected coming into the year. He has earned the opportunity, no doubt about it. And once he gets healthy, I think he will be productive, as we saw earlier this season. Guy like James Peoples, CJ Donaldson, they need to figure out the best way to use these guys. I mean, CJ Donaldson right now has been relegated essentially to a short yardage guy. He's not getting as many carries as he was early in the season. Is that the role? If it is, fine. I don't think that's what they expected. I think they expect him to be able to do more. He is catching the ball, and I'll get to some of that in a second. And then James Peoples, he played I think 15 snaps on Saturday, something around there, and didn't have a carry. So what is his role going to be? Obviously, he's got to earn it. He's not just going to be given the right to carry the ball. But this is a guy who they are very excited about. We're very excited about coming into the season, and I think they still have belief that he can do some things, but you just haven't seen it enough. And I think that's been part of the problem. The run game, from the offensive line standpoint, Ryan Day said, he didn't think it was just bad rushing, but that there were some breakdowns in what Ohio State wanted to do. And I think that's mainly focused on the blocking and the offensive line play on Saturday. What was as bad as it's been this season, which is not saying a ton because I think offensive line play has been all in all pretty good. Ryan Day was asked specifically about the right guard position, where Tegra Shabola has been the starter. I think it's 23-ish games in a row now. Obviously going all the way back through last season. Was the starter on a national championship team, but I think everyone would admit of that group, he was the one that other teams were able to get after a little bit and create issues. It's been the same this season. You saw early on in the year, Tegra Shabola rotating with Ethan Onianwa. Ethan Onianwa has fallen out of that rotation, and Josh Padilla, who we had pegged as a center, but shows he can play some guard, has gotten some opportunity. Ryan Day said that they will look at everything. Was I believe the quote this week when asked about that right guard position. And I would not be surprised to see more of a split when the Buckeyes come back against Penn State, maybe get Josh Padilla in there more. I've seen several people suggest that Josh Padilla should be the full-time guy based on what they've seen. I will defer to the coaches that work with these guys every day, but there's no doubt that when you watch this offensive line, the Tegra has had some struggles this year. And look, on Saturday against Wisconsin, it wasn't just Tegra. Everyone except I believe it was Austin's or Luke Montgomery and Carson Hinsman gave up at least one pressure. It was just an uncharacteristically poor, and there were some good things. I don't want to say that, but based on kind of the standard, it was an uncharacteristically poor executed game, and Ryan Day admitted that they didn't do the things they need to do in order to allow the run game to have its success. And then obviously the running backs have to make some plays as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the Buckeyes do coming out of this week. I do have to imagine that the focus will be on getting the run game going. You saw the passing attack from Julian Sayin and these wide receivers on Saturday. Now, granted, Wisconsin, the defense, not that's where you're going to attack Wisconsin's defense if you are trying to beat the Badgers is through the air, especially if you can do it with weapons like Ohio State has. So, I don't know how much you can read into that. I think it will be interesting to see if the Buckeyes lean as heavily on the passing attack when they get back on the field in a couple weeks against Penn State. I do think that whether the run game is going or not, if it is improved, I think that this team's strength has always been getting, and this goes back, several years now, getting the ball to the players, the playmakers on the outside. The best way to move the ball to attack opposing defenses is through the air. Now, when you have a rushing attack like they did a year ago, or I mentioned J.K. Dobbins earlier, those guys, like, you've got to use that as well. But when you have the talented receivers and the talented quarterbacks that Ohio State has, you've got to make that more of a focal point. We've seen the results when the Buckeyes haven't done that, a la the Michigan games of recent years. And then we've seen what happens when they do. And yes, during the playoff run last year, it was more balanced. I mean, that's probably the best example of what you want this offense to look like. But I think they can go even further if they need to into the passing attack. Does that feel right to an Ohio State team that has searched for balance and historically has run the ball well? I don't know if that matters, frankly. I think if you're winning football games, you're moving the ball down the field, that's what matters. And so if that needs to be a stronger, heavy passing attack and you mix in the run, then I think that's, you do what you need to do to win games, as Ryan Day has said. And I think you saw the Buckeyes do that on Saturday. There was more RPO game, which I think opened up some more passing options. I thought Julian Sayin did a good job of making the right reads on those RPOs and deciding when to throw as opposed to just handing off every time. I think that seems to be a strength for him, and I'd like to see the Buckeyes lean on that a little bit more. Whether that means, that if Julian Sayin throws the ball or not depends on A, getting the read right, but B, how the defense, what the defense wants you to do. And so maybe the defenses going forward will try and take away, some of the pass so that Julian Sayin does have to hand it off and hope that they can attack the Buckeyes in the run game and not allow that to be explosive. And we haven't seen many explosive plays there. But I do think that is a good weapon for this Buckeye team to use is this RPO. Let Julian Sayin kind of see what's going on out there, make good decisions. And I think that's a recipe for success. Another thing offensively is the way that the Buckeyes used the running backs in the pass game. I was going to ask Ryan Day. It was a lightning round, as they call it. So there were only, I think, 10 questions or so. So I did not get one today. But that was going to be my question about, I think, 9 receptions for running backs in this game. He has framed that before, not just passes to running backs, but to receivers as an extension of the running game. And I think that you had success. I think Bo Jackson had 3 receptions that went for 16 yards. They haven't had many runs that have gone for 16 yards this year. So, look, on the stat sheet, it's going to show that, Julian Sayin completed the pass to whichever running back. But I think if that's an area where the Buckeyes can be successful, and it makes sense that it is, because not only are these guys good pass catchers, and Julian Sayin seems to be doing a good job of reading where to get the ball, but also because of the receivers and the talented weapons the Buckeyes have, teams are going to play that softer shell coverage and give you stuff underneath. Well, if the running back over the middle, or they ran one play to Bo Jackson, that was, and they described it pretty well on the CBS broadcast. Basically, it was only ever going to him. There were guys out in front, but they were out there to be blockers, and more stuff like that. Yes, it won't show up in the rushing statistics. It doesn't help the Buckeyes look better as a rushing team, but I think that it's essentially finding a way to get the ball to the running backs, close-ish to the line of scrimmage, and then letting them do their work. And if things aren't well blocked, or if they're not reading the right holes, eliminate that. Right now, you bypass the offensive line, you bypass the need for the Buckeyes to hand the ball off. And I'm not saying go away from it altogether, but I just think there is, this gets you to that second level and allows these guys to turn and go. And usually they're pretty open. Now, teams will start recognizing that, and maybe that opens up some other things in the pass game, or maybe that gives you other things to run to. But I think that it does make a lot of sense for the Buckeyes to use that as a weapon. But at some point, you're going to need to be able to run the ball. We talked about it before. The weather's going to turn. If any of you have ever been up to Ann Arbor in late November, it is always cold. It's usually snowing. That's a game where you're going to need some run game stuff, I believe. And so, can you find success enough to be able to open things up for the rest of your offense? Because remember, Julian Sayin, we've not seen him in a cold weather game yet. A kid from Southern California, right? We've just not seen this team have to go through that, and how it will look trying to pass the ball in the cold. I believe they can do it, but I would have more confidence going to that game at the end of the year, and some other games. You're going to play UCLA and Purdue and teams like that, that could be some colder weather, some bad weather. It just seems like at some point you're going to need to be able to run the ball to win a game. And so I think this is a big week for something like that. And it's, again, not just the running backs, but the offensive line as well. And that right side has sort of been the biggest issue so far this year. So do the Buckeyes stick with Tegra Shabola and, just hope that he keeps improving? Ryan Day did say positive things about Tegra, as you would expect. Or do you turn it over to Josh Padilla? I think Ryan Day said you do what's best for the team, and that's easy to say, but you've got a guy like Tegra, who, again, was the starter on a national championship team last year. Benching a guy like that midseason, it seems easy. I understand, but there are relationships, and there's just a lot that actually, in this building, that actually get taken into account. But ultimately, I think you can't have some of the issues that they've had on the right side of that offensive line, and so you've got to figure out whether that's a personnel thing or not. And if it is, then you may need to change the personnel. And you've already seen the Buckeyes start to lean towards what they would do, giving Josh Padilla a drive in each of the last 2 games, and I think it's worked pretty well. So now expand that out. Is it as good throughout the course of a game? You hope so. And obviously these guys are in here practicing. The coaches see what they see from these players each week. So I expect that they will do what they think is best, and we'll wait and find out what that is when Ohio State takes the field against Penn State next week. Thank you guys for tuning in to this solo mission of the Bucknuts Instant Reaction. Again, Patrick Murphy from Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports from the Woody here, and we will talk to you later this week. Thanks, guys.